I dare AI to paint anything like this. It looks horrible, so I have to repaint the whole thing. This will be the 4th time I'm repainting this face. Ugh. From conception of the original photo shoot, to buying the biggest canvas I've ever painted on, to spending the most amount of hours by far on any painting, we have finally arrived at the end of this journey together. If you watched part 1 and 2 and enjoyed this video series and painting and you want to get a print, you can right now. I have a Kickstarter going on. 100% of profits from the Kickstarter are being donated to my art organization, Studio Slew. It's a nonprofit to help bolster up-and-coming artists, provide the cheapest classes with the highest quality materials and resources for any type of artist of any skill level. It's the 1-year anniversary, so this Kickstarter is like a crowdsourcing fundraiser. It's the only way you could get a print of this painting, and it's the only way you could actually read the short story is in the art book. So grab an art book, grab a print. It is going to a good cause. My art organization, I really just want to grow it, so it's going to a good place, single-handedly battling AI with in-person, awesome, fine art experiences. So without further ado, in the last part 2, I asked people to leave questions, and so we are gonna pick up right where we left off, and I'm gonna start answering some questions. Oiling out, can you please talk about that? Absolutely. When oil paint dries, the shadows fade, the color fades just like my entire first layer, and when I want to repaint on top of that, I want to match the fresh new paint that comes out of the tube. So we oil out, we bring back the shadows and the color. I'm using a mixture of half linseed oil, half odorless mineral spirits, and that's just gonna help me bring the sheen the same and match the fresh paint. Okay. This is the paintbrush I'll be using, and we'll do a little test right here. I think will be great to showcase what oiling out does, bringing the blacks and everything back. So, even over the snake immediately, like you could see that all in the mirror. I like to be sure to wipe it all down with my mixture. You could use any mixture you want, but just to make sure there's no drips and make everything smooth. And you know, a nice follow-up question here is people talking about working in layers. Do you let everything dry? And you know, there's a lot of like lore and theory around oil painting, fat over lean, and techniques you should do, but you can do whatever you want. There's no rules. I sort of paint however I like. Obviously, everything is dry now in order to do these glazes, but you could paint wet into wet, which I do a lot, but specifically for glazing, yes, everything is dry here, and I'm going in, trying to make things just a wee bit darker. And this is just working like a charm. Do you see what's going on? I will give you a before and after. This is sort of the exact effect that I wanted. Also, not on purpose, some texturing. And here's another great question. What drove you to make this piece a full scene? I'm assuming that means full instead of something more focused, talking about the big narrative. And I've just never done it before. One other painting, I did sort of a scene with a figure, but it was still pretty simple. This is my first time being really ambitious, and I just wanted to really challenge myself with a multi-figure, more going on than just like some portrait in a background. And I just wanted to test myself and challenge myself and make something surrounded with a cool story. And so now the whole canvas is covered with this glaze. I made things a little darker. I think it's very subtle, but I think very impactful, even though that's perhaps a paradox. It does something, and it does something that I wanted to do, and that was my goal. And now we get to paint more. Just curious, when you take breaks, do you stare at the painting or do you prefer not to look at it? This is another great question. I think it's really important also thinking about the scale of this painting. I need to constantly be stepping back. One of my issues and challenges was I paint so close, like 6 inches away, and then no one's seeing these details or all of these affects that I think are so important once you stand, 5 to 10 feet back, where, the average person is viewing the entire painting. They're not looking at individual places where you could get so caught up with details. They're looking at the general composition. So that's important. So I'd be sure to take a lot of breaks, not only looking at the painting, but taking a big step back. I think that's really important to have fresh eyes, fresh mind, and the perspective of someone who's viewing the painting. Does the frustration of the ugly painting phase make you quit on some paintings? Do you ever leave any of them unfinished? Absolutely not. Actually, I've never really left a painting unfinished. It's just not how I roll. I don't waste really my time with especially these giant projects where it's like planned and executed with a giant photo shoot. I'm gonna finish. And if it's a painting sketch, that's different. But a well executed giant idea, I'm always sticking through it. But the ugly painting phase is a part of all of that, even with little practice paintings. If you start, changing your perspective to be, there's always going to be an ugly painting stage, it's just part of the process, then I think that's a little more digestible to help you finish. It's just sort of always going to happen, the midpoint, and you know that you can surpass it. You know that there's more to do to get out of that stage. That's how I think of it. Do you think mixing acrylic paint with oil paint is a good idea, or do you just recommend oil? Well, first of all, you can only put oil on top of acrylic. You can't really put acrylic on top of oil. A lot of oil painters do acrylic underpaintings and then use oil on top. I do that quite a bit, not for this one specifically, but oil painting is just amazing for so many reasons. I give the analogy that oil painting is like a manual transmission car and acrylic is automatic. Loose analogy here, but the idea that oil paint has so much maneuverability and you can do so much with it. I feel like you have more control, albeit oil paint has a little more logistical learning curves with mediums and the dry times and working like that, so it is a little more complicated. But once you understand these parameters, which is not that much, you have so much freedom and so much control to do and use different techniques. It's really exciting. And for example here, I put down a layer and then I kind of brush it back to smooth it out. You could layer things. It's just so creamy and rich and opaque, and you can get really thin if you want. I think oil, there's just so much freedom and it's so awesome, and I'm still learning and trying to get better at different techniques. Like even here, I'm getting like a little more splotchy and textury, and I do that towards the other parts of the painting also, which is really exciting. But oil paint and acrylic paint is fine. It's whatever you want to do. I just love oil. And guys, we are starting to attack this portrait, which is the beginning of the doom and gloom and despair. I am oiling out again because it's been probably over a week since I oiled out the whole canvas, and I want to directly work on this part, so I'm directly oiling this section of the face. And I was not happy with the face at this point. It's sort of in that ugly painting phase, and I knew I had to remodel and repaint it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going back in and really trying to chisel out different shapes, move the face around. I go off the reference. I mean, like, I stray away from the reference, which I'll talk about later, but this is a complete failure and I'm getting oh so aggravated. So much so, I smudge and erase what I just worked on. Guys, horrible job here. I was ready to attack this reflection portrait, the face, feeling decent, going in, giving it my best, and I'm just fumbling completely and really despised it. One of those 2-hour, 3-hour painting sessions where I was just so aggravated and ended up just erasing it, and we are going to start anew now, and I'm gonna be way slower and I'm gonna be really thoughtful. I completely did not follow my rules here with slow down. It's the definition of I rushed it. So while I restart this portrait, we're gonna talk about the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace, the best website to build a website. I have been using Squarespace for over a year now for my nonprofit art organization. Squarespace has award-winning templates and 24-hour customer service. I've just really enjoyed using it as the home base for my platform. My website has the capability to host ticketed events to get people into my studio to draw. And if I ever needed e-commerce tools, they have tremendous, powerful tools for selling things online, everything you need under one place. It's super professional. The drag and drop grid method makes it so easy to customize your website or portfolio. I have nothing but good things to say about Squarespace and my experience. So check it out, go to squarespace.com to get a free trial. And when you're ready to build a website and buy a domain, go to squarespace.com/slew for 10% off. Do you ever change things on the go that you don't like from the reference? And yes, this is something I did for this whole figure and why I'm having so much trouble. The story, and there's a lot of context here, the story is that Medusa is looking at her younger self. And so the reference we captured, which is beautiful, our model Jade, I wanted her to look younger. So I'm sort of de-aging, almost like CGI, the reference. I'm using the reference, I'm using the pose, I'm using the lighting, but I'm trying to make her face and hair different, like softer features generally means younger. And I'm starting to just despise this reference because it's so complex and complicated, but less angular face, eyes just slightly different, and also the hair just sort of completely different. So I don't usually like to go outside of my reference because I'm not an amazing masterful artist that can just recreate things and concept art everything. I need reference to paint. That's why I go so ham with the photo shoot. But this composition and my idea and agenda with sort of the narrative of this transformation happening in the mirror is to make her younger, and it is just so torturous because I am just struggling. I can't nail it. I keep trying to fix it. I probably repaint this thing 3 times at this point. I'm changing the shape of the head, the features, and it is just getting so aggravating, people. New day, 4th time, repainting the face. Let's see if we can get it this time. I've drawn it on my iPad now, feeling a little more enthused and confident, but you never know. Guys, I also just want to say I'm back. Like, I just set up my whole setup. It's looking absolutely gorgeous, bringing the positivity back. I was just depleted of all hope and happiness for quite a while. And I'm just resetting positivity. I'm doing what I love. Got 2 cameras set up, and we're gonna crush this sucker. And so specifically what's wrong with this face is everything. I think the head shape is wrong, the eyes, the nose might be too big, some of the shadows, and then the lips are one of the main culprits. And it's one of these systems and situations where you try to reshape the eyes, and then it affects the nose, the distance or colors, and then you try to fix the nose, and then it affects the mouth. And it's all just horrible, big chomp of beans because I'm withering away, gotta get some sustenance. But it's just this giant game of pushing and pulling, and it's not really working. And anyone can see that there's some uncanny valley. Things are just not working in this portrait. Yes, I am my own self-critic. Yes, I am have high standards for myself, and I'm a perfectionist, but if you just look at this portrait, something's off, and it's just killing me. And you can see from my face here, I'm sleeping very minimally, also because my art show is in a few days, so I have to finish this and a million other things, but I am just in the perspective, in the zone of do whatever it takes to finish. And we're completely sort of off all of these goals and these beats like I was talking about in part 1, like my plan. The plan now is to just do anything to make it better, work as much and as long as possible. And this hair is another gigantic thorn in both of my big toes because it's off the reference. The lighting is kind of weird. It's coming from the top down, but also some intense rim light from behind. But we're just putting the work in. I was sort of telling myself, if I just work nonstop, I'll eventually get it, right? And that is true. And you could see from where I live the past week here in my little painting area that I'm doing anything it takes. And it's kind of fun to be in this state of delusion and lack of sleep, but it's also very exciting because it's just a giant challenge and it's a giant puzzle, which is why we paint, right? Do I have a specific color palette I use for this painting? Yes and no. Basically, I use a lot of the same colors: titanium white, yellow ochre. This is cadmium red. This is transparent red oxide, alizarin crimson, burnt umber, and that's permanent green. And then I'll use some like ultramarine blue if I need it. But that's generally the palette for this. You know, basically red, yellow, blue, a couple browns. I pre-mix a lot. Sometimes I don't. Next question that a lot of people were talking about was the misalignment of the reflection of the hands. This is another situation of sort of the creative license and context of the narrative, which will be explained in the short story, which you can only get on the Kickstarter book that I'm releasing, the art book. But she's a younger version of herself. The idea of the transformation is not literal. I mean, obviously a mirror should literally reflect exactly, but I thought because, you know, they're the same person, it's her past self, but they're different now. That's the agenda of the story. The story is going to talk about how Medusa likes being different, and so that I thought the reflection should be different. That's sort of the explanation. If you can't live with that, I'm sorry. That's just as simple as it is. Maybe I overcomplicated it. Oh boy. So it's pretty darn late, and I'm calling it. Finally finished. You could just keep working it forever. But for my sanity, and because I have so much to do, it's October 7th. My art show is on the 12th. I have to edit this whole video. I have a million things to prepare. So, and I also have to varnish this painting. It needs to dry for at least 2-3 days. You know, it's just like a retouch varnish. It's not a final varnish, but just for the show, I need to make it homogenized. And so I need to let it dry for at least 3 days. I'll varnish it the day or two before. My brain hurts. So here we are at the end of the journey. I've actually recently just varnished this big sausage. A very important stage to make it all look homogeneous. I actually varnished a few other older paintings to prepare for my art show. The varnish I'm using is just a retouch varnish, so I can be taken off, and it's just to, again, make everything look nice. The different pigments dried differently and it looked a little weird, so this brings the entire surface to the same sheen and quality, and it makes it look fresh for the art show, which is in 2 days. So I'm doing a million things, but this is finished and I'm so happy with it. This video is actually gonna come out the day of the art show. It's 2 days, so if you're there right now or if you're going, amazing. If you're not around, that's fine. There's gonna be a full, huge behind the scenes recap vlog of everything preparing for the art show and what's going down there. So check that out. That's probably next week. Very, very exciting. So Medusa in the mirror, oil on canvas, 54 inches by 72 inches. The biggest painting ever, the most ambitious project. Holy macaroni, it was a whirlwind. If you made it through all the part 1, 2, and 3. It really was challenging in the sense that I haven't experienced before, and I'm just so happy with myself, not in like a pompous way, but, and not even because of how it turned out. I love how it turned out, but because I saw it through. I went the distance. I actually gave it the most amount of effort I could. You know, I couldn't do any more, and so that makes me really happy and excited and proud of myself. Again, not trying to ego trip at all. It's just like, the end result is awesome, and that's the point. Hey, we have this painting now to look at, but the journey I went on was pretty intense and filled with ups and downs. Not to be too dramatic. Off camera, actually, I repainted the reflection again. I'm finally at a place, and of course we're done now, where I'm really happy with it. I finally found it. I think it looks great. You know, this whole composition just makes me so happy. The two figures in this setting, this dark cave with the light, you know, coming from above, hitting the foreground. The reflection character is way brighter. I just really love how it looks. It's so fun and punchy, and it's just cool. I just think it's cool, and I like the composition, the setting. And it's a narrative image, meaning there's a story that accompanies it. There's a story, a short story that I wrote that gives context to this image. And the only way you could read that short story, if you haven't heard me say it 10 other times, is in my art book that's on Kickstarter right now. 100% of the profits that are gonna be coming from this Kickstarter will be donated to my nonprofit, Studio Slew, an art organization. And so the short story, not to give it away too much, pairs with this image. And there's the Medusa myth. It's sort of my retelling of the Medusa myth. It's a very short story, like 1 or 2 pages, but it talks about the power that Medusa has and how she actually likes it, how she does not miss her old self. So just from this image standing up by itself, you could tell what's going on. It's like Medusa looking at her reflection into her younger self, but the short story actually gives a lot of context to how she feels. You know, you don't know what they're thinking. Obviously, it's just an image. That's why I wrote this short story, and it's really cool and awesome. And so, you know, there's a lot of more information there, but, you know, I think it still is awesome as a standalone image. And yeah, actually you could get 2 different size prints. You could do 18 by 24, or you could do 9 by 12, and they're add-ons on the Kickstarter. If you buy a book, you add them on, and those are the different prices. And they're super, super high quality G-clay prints. And the 18 by 24 is only 50 bucks. That's way less than I would price it if it wasn't through the Kickstarter. Let's see, so that's really it. I would love to hear what you guys say in the comments. I love reading comments, what you thought of this whole project. I read them all, it's really enjoyable. So let me know what you think. And actually, before we go, there's this cool, let's see if I could do this all in one shot. No cuts. Hold on. If you could see in here, my painting area, up here is a GoPro. Right there, you see that? And I had it doing a time lapse for the entire project. And I am going to show you now. I actually don't know how it's turned out. I haven't edited it yet, but from the beginning, in the same shot for all 200 hours, or most of the 200 plus hours, in this single shot. So that's what I'm gonna leave you with. Nothing but love to everyone. Thank you so much for the support and the love on this project. I'll see you in the next video, because there's quite a bit more in the pipeline for November and December, even though I will take a break after my art show for about 3 weeks. See you in the next video.